Good morning, Lieutenant Governor.
Good morning.
Well, I think we're all on. The gang's all here. Welcome and good morning. My name is DeLand, and we're going to start this. It's a little after 8. Our apologies. But this is I guess it's the legislative subcommittee meeting of the Darke County Chamber of Commerce. So that's a long-winded title for for what this really is. But to give some context, the Darke County Chamber over the past year has really tried to work with our business communities, many of you guys, many new faces, many familiar, on some of the issues that are just most current, relevant, top of our head. A few months ago, we had another kind of deeper dive, as many of you remember, and we pulled in 2 policy experts from ODJFS talking about what was going on with the unemployment system. At our last meeting, it was just such a recurring theme from all of our members in all different industries about workforce and trends in workforce, what people are doing with people, where are people, how are we going to continue operating with less people. So we turn to the person that we know has workforce expertise in his background, and that's our own Lieutenant Governor, Jon Husted. So we are so thankful that Lieutenant Governor is with us this morning to kind of talk about all the initiatives going on in the workforce around the state. Most of you know, but I'm just going to reiterate some of the highlights. Lieutenant Governor Husted is obviously serving with Governor Duane as Lieutenant Governor, and he has done that since 2018. Previously, he was Secretary of State, which we all, automatically think about elections, but his work with the Secretary of State was really monumental with the business community. He started a division of Secretary of State's office, the Ohio Business Central, which allowed businesses to begin filing paperwork online. He really brought about so much efficiency, actually not needing any taxpayer money for the last 2 years of the term. So really historic, monumental things in the business sector of the Secretary of State's office. He reduced the fee for starting new businesses by 21%, something that many of the new members with us today, I'm sure, appreciate. And then before that, obviously, he served in the Ohio House, and he was Speaker of the House. And I was actually a legislative aide at that time. So when I see Lieutenant Governor Husted, my mind instantly goes to Speaker Husted, and my blood pressure raises a little bit because he was the big boss in the building at the time. So just also as an aside, and very pertinent to this group, as a UD grad, Lieutenant Governor Husted stayed in the Dayton community after graduation. He rose up serving the business community, and he eventually served as Vice President for Business and Economic Development for the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. So he truly, understands many of the initiatives, is a chamber partner, and I think is why he is so poised at dealing with workforce issues. So we appreciate your time today, Lieutenant Governor. And with that, we will turn it over to you to kind of hear from you on all things workforce.
Well, thank you, Katie. It's a pleasure to join you, and I'm going to dig right into what I think are the issues, some of the solutions, and then allow you to ask some questions so I can make sure I've addressed the things that are on you and the other members of the Chamber's Legislative Committee's mind. We had a nice win yesterday on one thing, as a matter of fact. A judge, it was former Attorney General Mark Dan, was challenging the Governor Duane's decision to eliminate the $300 bonus payments that the federal government had put in place. We eliminated those, announced we were eliminating them in May. They went away. You had to give 30 days notice. They went away on June the 26th. And the lawsuit challenged that the governor didn't have the authority to do that. Well, we won that litigation, and it is by no means am I suggesting that it is the panacea to all of our problems, because it certainly isn't. But I'll give you this statistic, which I'm going to, when I do media interviews today about it, I'm going to tell them. In the 4 weeks since that policy went into effect, 63,000 people have left the long-term unemployment rolls. So any way you look at it, it's been a success. It hasn't solved all the problems, but it makes sense. As I also say, if you were making more money or as much money or nearly as much money not working as you would working, it's not an irrational thing to do to not work. We would certainly expect that might be a choice that someone would make. And so now that victory yesterday, I think we'll keep our policy in place. And then in September 6th, the federal policy for extended unemployment benefits, unless Congress does away with it, will go away. And I think that the environment will continue to improve. So first of all, government should do no harm. It has been doing harm to this cause of workforce. Hopefully the last federal policy that I believe is an impediment will go away, and things will continue to improve in terms of an available supply of a workforce. The unemployment rate in Ohio is substantially lower than it is in the rest of the country. In some parts of Ohio, I think Darke County would fall into this. It's significantly lower than the state average, and we have to continue to focus on building the talent pool. I will tell you, as Ohio and the nation comes out of the pandemic, and companies have realized for a variety of reasons they can't depend on a global supply chain, they are reshoring, domesticating that supply chain more so than they had in the past. And we have a number of opportunities that are coming our way in this state of major announcements. I mean, there are new things popping up all the time, new industries. Even in the little county I grew up in Williams County in Northwest Ohio, they announced yesterday a $200 million investment in a salmon farm where they're gonna grow salmon and supply the Midwest with salmon. I mean, it's just, there's new things happening everywhere in our state, creating lots of jobs and lots of opportunity. But will we have the workforce? I say this to a group of friendly folks here. I worry about that, and I'm focused on it every single day because I want us to be able to capitalize on the opportunities I believe are headed our way over the next 10 years. I'm going to digress for just a second, because when I started my career, I was at the Dayton Chamber of Commerce working in economic development in the mid-1990s. I remember how hard it was to sell Ohio and to sell the Dayton area back then, because it was a post-industrial period. GM was starting to shut down plants. Delphi, it sold off Delco, which became Delphi, and eventually 30,000 just direct auto jobs went away. It was hard. It was a hard time. Ohio had a very bad tax system then. During the course of those 15 to 20 years, we've gone from a high tax state that was difficult to do business to a lower tax state that it's much easier to do business. And all the business ratings from CNBC to CEO magazine, you name it, we're in the top 10 now. We are on the map, and I believe we are the go-to state in the Midwest for job creation because we have such a diverse economy. We have a large population to draw from for workforce. But for the future, we're not going to be able to secure growing businesses, new businesses without a workforce. And so it's all hands on deck. From the very beginning of helping more kids get educated at an earlier age so they can read by the 3rd grade, so that they're proficient in math by the 6th grade, and that when they get to high school, they're getting a relevant education that prepares them for work, meaning earning industry credentials. We're really pushing that. We put $42 million, I believe it was, in the budget this year to pay bonuses to high schools and career centers for turning out more students with in-demand job credentials. I was at Upper Valley Career Center not too long ago, not too far from you. Their students there this year made $1.5 million working during the school year. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, getting them connected to employers. We really have to focus on getting our high school students connected to you before they leave high school. Internships, work opportunities. If you're not partnered with your high school or your career center in that endeavor, please do so in areas where you need talent. Let's connect them early. Let's show them a career pathway. Let's get them the education they need. We also have made a major investment at upskilling existing employees. We're never going to get the workforce that we need just by who graduates high school every year. We have to take the people who are already adults and in the workforce and give them opportunities to earn the skills for the changing environment in the workplace. That's why we created the Tech Cred program and the partner program IMAP. Will pay for your training. If you're an employer, hopefully you're familiar with this program already, but you apply, you pick the employee, you pick the skill that you want them to have, you pick the provider, you apply. Once they earn the credential, short-term credential, sometimes it could be weeks, sometimes it could be months to earn it, then we'll reimburse you up to $2,000. And I know some companies that it's not how I designed it, but envisioned it, but I'm fine with what they're doing. They're saying, yeah, this is our enrichment program. This is our career path program. We're just adopting Tech Cred and telling the people that we bring in that we can help you earn all the credentials you want to go up as high as you want to go. And I'm like, great, that's what we want. And it's great for the taxpayers. Why is that? Why is that? Because we don't pay anything until somebody earns the credential. And once you earn the credential, we're fine reimbursing, because that means you're probably going to earn more, you're going to be of more value, you're going to help us enrich. And we started out with a goal of 10,000 per year. We're now upping that goal to 20,000 people that we want to upskill per year. And you can do a lot of these skills. You can get a lot of these skills online through distance learning, or you can go to a local community college. A lot of places that you can earn these skills. So, those are two ways that we're trying to change the trajectory of our workforce. Putting more money into STEM education, either through some investments that Jobs Ohio are doing, or what we're doing through the Choose Ohio First Scholarship. Because we know that talent is essential. There's all skills matter. Some skills matter more than others, as we know. We more highly reward them, and they're more, they're super important to being able to recruit businesses. When we landed the Peloton deal up in Northwest Ohio, 2,100 jobs, pay around $32 an hour on average. World-class manufacturing facility. The number one issue they asked us was, can you provide us the workforce? And I promised we would. So I got to deliver. It's going to be difficult, but look, yeah, we need cybersecurity specialists, we need coding people, but we also need electricians and mechanical engineers and CNC machine operators and truck drivers. I mean, right now on OhioMeansJobs.com, because I hear it all the time when I say employers can't find workforce, people of different political persuasion and people in the media will say, well, it's because there are too many low-paying jobs. There are 111,000 jobs that pay $50,000 a year or more on Ohio Means Jobs right now. There are a lot of good jobs out there. And when people talk about raising the minimum wage, I tell them minimum wage isn't even a factor right now in Ohio, because you can't hire somebody at minimum wage. There's so many great jobs out there. But we have to build a character in our nation, a character in our state. And we have to value work, and we have to value all kinds of work, and we have to lift kids up. that choose different pathways other than college. And by the way, I also say this, a career center is, you're just as likely to be enrolled in a college course while you're at your career center as you would be at your high school. And a lot of career centers, more than 50% of the kids are simultaneously enrolled in a college credit plus course. We got to change this culture. We can't leave any student behind. We have to get every one of them connected. And sometimes we know that they have family situations. We know that drugs and alcohol and other things are in the way. And we have to try to knock down all those barriers and help everybody live up to their God-given potential. And that's how, as a state, we will overcome some of these challenges. We're putting the training programs in place. We're gonna look at some of the one-time money that we have about investing in machinery and equipment to do the training in all of our schools and colleges and so forth. But what's economic development and workforce mean? It means different things to different people, depending on where you're situated. But I know of a couple of deals that we have that are coming to the Dayton area that are going to continue to be wonderful at growing the economy. But that also means it's going to continue to create a strain on people to find a workforce. But the economy is growing. We got to get everybody off the bench, off of unemployment, get them the job training they need, and get them going for the future. So those are some of the things that I wanted to highlight and thoughts that I wanted to share. Katie, happy to open it up to questions. I know time is ticking on me here, and we'll hear what everybody has to say.
Sure. We just had some questions kind of submitted to us before this started, and one I think actually is pretty relevant with the sliding scale. Rhonda Rich from Edison Community College asked, potential workers are struggling with not making enough to pay for health insurance, and employers cannot afford to provide it for their employees. How do we solve the problem of these potential workers choosing to stay on public assistance or not working so that they qualify for free public health care?
Well, I mean, I don't have an easy answer to that question, and I also have a brutal answer to that question to some extent. Is that there are plenty of jobs out there that I answered the question when I talked about the fact we have 111,000 jobs that pay more than $50,000 a year. There are a lot of jobs out there that do that. Jobs that don't provide health care or enough money are going to go away. You're not going to be able to find people to fill those jobs. I see wages going up all the time with employers who are raising wages to compete and take. I'm sure there's some of you who have had. I mean, for example, when I talked to people, I was up in the Sandusky area yesterday. When Cedar Point's paying $20 an hour for employees, what does that do for everybody else? It forces them to have to pay more. Look, I can't fix what employers pay. That's the marketplace. And if the employers are not going to pay market rates and provide the benefits, then they're just not going to get the employees. And those jobs will get automated, as a lot of them are, or the employer is just going to have to pay more money or pay a better compensation package, because I'm sure many of you are doing that right now. And look, we have a safety net for people. You can qualify for unemployment while you're doing job training, but we have to have people, and we have to have institutions, and we have to have systems that put people in the right training programs that will help them earn the skills to take those jobs that are available out there that do pay good wages with benefits that allow them to sustain themselves and a family if they have one. I don't have a better answer for you than that.
Sure. No, and and I know that as mentioned, and I think we'll get into it in our second half, Rhonda, on that kind of the sliding scale of kind of what, where healthcare and other benefits can meet with unemployment. There's, I think, some trends that Stephanie and Mike Bowers are going to talk about too on that. So Also, I think just more generally, and I know that you've heard this, we're not the first workforce group that has come to you. Just asking also just about our population. We know that we're an aging state. We know that we're losing people, those trends to nicer weather states, which you can't fix the weather, you can't fix the seasons. So with less people in Ohio, how do you anticipate kind of competing with some of those other states? We hear a lot about state income tax. How feasible would it be to eliminate that and compete with the states that do?
Well, there's a lot in that question. Two things. First of all, we actually gained population in the last decade. We were one of the few states in the Midwest who actually gained population. We didn't gain enough to sustain a congressional seat that we lost, but we were very close to doing that. In the last 5 years, Ohio's population has grown. Now, having said that, it's not all grown. It's not like it's grown uniformly. There are some places in the state that lost population, and there are some states that gained. In central Ohio, for example, or in the Columbus metro area has grown substantially. Northeast Ohio has sort of lost population. Southwest Ohio has been a net gainer, but the population center of Ohio is moving from northeast to central and southwest, generally speaking. But you do have a demographic issue that we are an aging population, and sometimes people just go, hey, I'm not going to work anymore. I don't, but I do think that there are a lot of opportunities that, I talked to someone the other day who was telling me the story. They said, well, because they're literally a company designed that's being started up to help bring retired people back into the workforce. And he said, he posed a question to someone that said, well, what are you going to do when you retire? And they're like, well, I'm going to go to Europe. And they're like, okay, well, after you're done with that 3-week trip, what are you doing? What are you doing with your retirement? Because there are a lot of people who may be willing to work. They just don't want to have to work 60 hours a week, 50 hours a week, have a bunch of responsibility. They might be able to, and I think that drawing in, thinking about these problems differently, from bringing retirees back in to second chance employment for people who maybe had some minor brushes with the law or addictions or things like that, that we're going to take second looks at those folks. And we're just going to think about how to solve these problems a little bit differently. But at the same time, we also need high-end talent. You need engineers and electricians and coders and cybersecurity talent. And I believe that we have a chance to become a magnet for some of that. And let me also give you a new statistic, Katie. You may not know this, even though, because you recall back when you used to work in the legislature. Now in Ohio, this year and in subsequent years, this is where the numbers are right now, we have 12,000 more students enrolling as freshmen in college than we have leaving Ohio to enroll as freshmen in college, meaning that we are actually a net gainer of 12,000 new students in those first years. The key is that we have to keep them here. And that's where I think internships and co-ops and what I referred to earlier are really important, connecting them to employers earlier. I remember the statistic when we created the Choose Ohio First Scholarship. Students will go to work within 50 miles. 80% of the time, they'll go to work within 50 miles of where they graduated high school or where they graduated college. So if you connect them early to an employer, you're more likely to keep them.
Yeah, no, that's very important. And I think you've touched on some of this too. Darke County is heavily agriculture based. We also have a number of members with us today.
Well, and by the way, I forgot the tax part of your question.
Oh yeah.
We'll go back to when I was speaker and you were working in the legislature. We had a top tax rate that was almost 8% then. We had a death tax. We reformed the corporate taxes in Ohio. We now have no corporate tax. The top rate is, instead of being 8%, is now 3.99%. We had another round of tax cuts, and We cut the capital gains tax with the deduction for what you pay your employees. Ohio's tax code is now very competitive. If you sell a business in New York or California, the government's going to get probably about half of the proceeds of your business. In Ohio, we're working so that's that's very competitive, and we're much more on the. I would argue that our tax code in Ohio is more business and employee friendly than any tax code in the Midwest now. No, that didn't used to be the case. We're now competing on taxes with a lot of folks. Yes, it's warm in Florida. Yes, it's warm in Texas. Sometimes it's too warm. Sometimes you get hurricanes. Why would you put your supply chain in Hurricane Alley? Put it in the Midwest. We've got clean water, no salt. It's time to be here.
There you go. Sounds good. Last question, because I know that we're nearing your end. And you touched on some of this, so this is kind of another loaded question to throw at you. But as mentioned, Darke County is heavily ag-based. We also have a number of skilled nursing facilities here. And all of these require a little bit more of the 24-hour shift, the needed 24 hours. So, how much of this goes into automation? How innovative should we be thinking about automation? Or, it's a touchy subject, but migrant labor forces, relooking at immigration for a new pool of people, prison education. And then I think you also mentioned those partnerships with high schools. So almost just, any pool of physical bodies. Because some things can be automated, some can't. How innovative are you seeing other employees or employers from around the state?
Yeah, being very innovative, particularly at automating low-wage jobs. Robotics and other things like that are going to end a lot of the repetitive work. If you worked in something that had a repetitive nature to it, those kinds of jobs are going away. They're going to be replaced by robots. I don't think that is a bad thing, because I don't think those are the enriching kinds of jobs that most people want to do. I think that giving them, training them and giving them some higher skills is going to make their lives much more interesting, their work much more interesting, and give them greater earning power. In agriculture, many of you know how much automation has entered that space. It will continue to do so. But skilled nursing, on the other hand, that's one that you can't automate. And skilled nursing has been harmed greatly by the lack of a workforce, rising wages, and the fact they can't pay people more because their reimbursement on Medicaid and other things is set. So we're going to have to relook at some of those critical care areas and maybe use some of the one-time money we have to increase reimbursement on some of those. We did that in the budget with skilled nursing. There may have to be another look at it to see if we can do more.
Thank you. Well, I think we are kind of at the point where Lieutenant Governor Husted has to get on with other Ohio official business.
I am. I'm actually going to go do a Fox Business News interview, and I'm going to tell them how great Ohio is and why people should move here and live here and invest here. And I think they agree with that.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you for all that you do for our state. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So turning to the rest of our agenda, we are thrilled to also have a couple of other economic and business development expertises from our area. Let me get my list of all that's who's with us. I know Mike Bowers, who is the director of the Darke County Economic Development Office, and Tamala Marley are with us locally to kind of field some more very Darke County centric questions. And also Stephanie Keinath. I had to recheck how to pronounce it. I know Stephanie from before, and she didn't have that last name. But Stephanie is with the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce as the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. So these experts, again, also all day, every day, talk about workforce, talk about innovation. They hear from many of you. They're also looking outside of our region, outside of Ohio, into what other states are doing, what other regions are doing that are similar to us. So we're actually going to turn it over to Stephanie, if that's okay, just to talk about what you've heard more in the Dayton region, maybe touching on what Lieutenant Governor Husted mentioned with Tech Cred and his IMAP program, and some of the other more recent budget investments that he's made in workforce.
Great. Thank you, Katie. And thank you so much for the invitation, Peggy, to be part of this conversation this morning. As Katie mentioned, I work for the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. So we have a 9-county footprint. Darke County is certainly part of this important footprint for us. And Peggy and I have worked on issues together over the last year. I know Lieutenant Governor Husted particularly talked about the issue around unemployment compensation, and that was something that all of our regional chambers came together on to really advocate. So we are, as a regional chamber of commerce, really focused on both workforce development, but the policy around workforce development. So I'm a registered lobbyist. That means that I spend a lot of time at the state, local, and federal level looking at and advocating for business-friendly workforce policy. And what I've discovered, especially over the last 2 years, is that I found myself advocating for things that I didn't know I would advocate for. One big issue that has come up over the last couple of years, particularly in the light of COVID, is the impact of childcare on workforce. And so a lot of my advocacy during the last state budget cycle was looking at childcare and expanding opportunities for Ohio's workforce to take advantage of publicly funded childcare. So the way that the system works right now is families are eligible, well, I should say prior to the last budget cycle, families were eligible at 128% of the federal poverty level. So that meant that a family of 3 had to make less than about $28,000 to $30,000 a year in order to qualify for public assistance for childcare. So what we worked to do is expand that threshold, and it was successfully put into the last state budget. So that's expanded to 142%. This really impacts our workforce when it comes to our single parent households, which many of our communities have, particularly single moms. And so that means they can stay in the workforce, keep working, and still access some of those benefits that keep their child in high quality childcare. So that's a big issue, and that's come up nationally. Ohio is not unique in that, but we really saw it the impact of it over the last 18 months. I was just looking up some numbers before we hopped on today, and at the end of 2020, there was about 5.4 million fewer women in the workforce. Those numbers are not sustainable. We need every able person in our workforce. We all know that across every sector that we have. And so digging into those numbers a little bit, certainly there was COVID-related job loss, but there were even more than that, women opting out of the workforce because either childcare wasn't available, it was not affordable, or there was concerns about health and safety. And so what we're trying to do is tackle a few of those problems: affordability of childcare and accessibility. So even as we look at the affordability piece, there is also accessibility, and I'm sure many of you know, being in rural areas, childcare access is an issue for so many parts of our state, and so that continues to be a struggle, and that continues to be, I think, our job to help childcare providers really make sure that they're sustainable. They have enough seats for the workers in our community. The other issue, a couple other issues I just wanted to touch on that are issues that I didn't expect would become workforce issues, but have. The housing issue, so access to all levels of housing in communities, particularly affordable housing. we're looking at development in different parts of our larger region. And if a company moves in and needs 2,000 workers, which Lieutenant Governor Husted mentioned earlier, Peloton, if those workers can't access housing in the communities where that business is located, then the cost of working there is significantly higher, either because they have to travel farther or it's just unsustainable. The housing costs are too high to support the local workforce. And so that's a larger issue, I think, that we're all working on. I will say, compared to some of the horrible stories you hear about the housing costs and in the coastal cities, Ohio stands pretty good in terms of affordability. But particularly when it comes to our larger logistics and transportation companies, some of those lower wage jobs that Lieutenant Governor Husted talked about, that's really where that crisis happens, where that affordability of housing. And then I mentioned transportation, and that's wrapped up into it as well. How do we make sure that these companies are able to get the workers they need via whether it's public transportation, better access from our infrastructure perspective, so making sure our roads are up to par so that they can be accessed easily. So all of that plays into workforce policy in ways that are continuing to surprise me. So those are a couple of things I wanted to mention. And then a few other things that I'll try to kind of differentiate, because Lieutenant Governor Husted touched on a lot of great stuff around automation, which certainly is going to impact a lot of our industries. I think the lower wage jobs in particular, where people are kind of weighing the cost benefit, of making that job automated versus looking for a human worker and not being able to pay them as much. But what I really wanted to underscore that he mentioned is the importance of the K-12 experience for our future workforce. So I probably don't need to tell anybody on this call that, we need to continue to move the conversation away from children deciding between college or career, because ultimately everybody needs a career. And so knowing that there's a whole spectrum of options for kids, whether they want to go to work directly from high school, whether they want to get a credential, the importance of talking about jobs as early as possible is something we've been really focused on across the region. So helping employers get embedded into schools really early on. So, elementary school experiences where, we're connecting employers so they can talk about these jobs in a way that the kids start to know what those jobs look like, maybe start to get excited. So by the time they get to middle school, we've created a few opportunities. One is called Career Adventures Camp. So they're spending a whole week learning about different industries across the region in a summer camp, but also smaller opportunities, partnering with our library system, bringing employers in, doing hands-on projects, really cool stuff. So by the time they get to high school, they're ready to jump into an internship, a job shadowing, an apprenticeship. And if we start to look at the pipeline that way, where everything about our education system emphasizes the importance of jobs, I think that starts to move the needle for us. So, that's the tricky thing about workforce. We need workers now, and we need to look at how we identify the folks that are on the sidelines, on the bench, and get them into the workforce. But we also need to be focusing on the workforce of the future. I've got a couple more things to bring up, but I'll stop there and let questions or other folks chime in as well.
I did want to give, just to piggyback on what you talked about with K-12, because and working in this sphere too, that's such a focus right now in state politics, is kind of community colleges and our career tech, that investment in that, and changing the stigma. Edison is with us today, and they are a wonderful Darke County partner. And I think more and more families and more students are understanding that the landscape that maybe people like me, people like most of you on this call, it's just different than it was 10, 15 years ago, with expectations of college versus career and how you can do both at the same time. And we do have Tamala Marley with us, who is in Darke County, and she works with our Darke County schools on a lot of these programs. So I wanted to give her an opportunity just to talk about locally some of these initiatives that Stephanie mentioned.
Thanks, Katie. Yes, we have a lot of schools doing a lot of great things right now with our students, and my role, I'm very fortunate to work with all 8 Darke County schools, as well as our 3 career tech centers that our students feed into. We have great relationships built with Upper Valley Career Center, with MVCTC, and also with the Greenville C-Tech. And so there's a lot of great things going on. I will tell you that I was so pleased to hear Lieutenant Governor talk about the importance of connecting to schools and to those younger workers, getting opportunities for those internships, those apprenticeships, those pre-apprenticeships. Those are definitely being focused on within the state. And there are a lot of employers who are catching on to that and getting involved. So much so that sometimes when there is someone, or many times when there's someone who is interested in an internship, there's multiple employers who are competing now for that emerging workforce. So if you haven't considered that or thought about that as your business, you really need to be looking at that. There are many who are ahead of you already if you haven't looked at it, and you don't want to be left any further behind on that initiative. And we are fortunate to be able to help to connect employers and students, or to schools as well, through a number of things that we're doing. To give an idea of the wide variety of those kinds of internship opportunities, we are co-sponsors of the 20 Under 20 awards that are done in the spring, and you can just Google 20 Under 20 to get some of the news coverage of it, but we work together with Mercer, Auglaize, and Shelby counties. And in the 3 or 4 years that I've been involved in that program, we've watched the number of nominees for those, and the breadth and width of the types of careers that are being represented, that students are being nominated for. And they're getting outstanding employees through those internships, and loyal employees, because they've helped to nurture and given them opportunities. And then they'll continue to invest in those individuals for further training to meet especially those high demand positions that our employers are struggling to fill. We also work with all of our county schools and open up opportunities for job shadows. We do a junior job shadow week in the fall, and we offered a couple of years ago in 2019, which was our last opportunity to do in-person half-day job shadows. We had about 106 different opportunities for our students to participate in a half-day job shadow, and it helped to show them the wide variety of careers that are available just here in Darke County and slightly beyond. So if that would be something that our employers would want to know more about and be involved in, I'd love to talk with them some more. We sponsored this year, just got over through that 2 weeks ago, our second summer manufacturing camp with junior high students, which was a great success. We had 20 students representing 6 of our county schools, and 4 of our local manufacturers who were involved, and getting kids excited about very hands-on learning opportunities. Learning to interact with you sometimes is a little bit, we have to think a little differently than the way we might interact with the folks that we work with on a daily basis, but it also resparks the energy within our employers when they interact with those kids, and they're giving incredibly intelligent and thoughtful questions. So those are some of the initiatives that we're working on, and continuing to grow ways that we can connect our local businesses to our local schools and that emerging workforce.
I'm muted. Thanks, Tamala. I appreciate that. Mike, do you have anything further to add? I know this was kind of Tamala's kind of main initiative within your office, but any other thoughts?
Yeah, it's, I mean, obviously that's been a big focus for us over the last 5 years, is to look at how do we engage that next generation. Tamala's position is very key in working with our local companies and all 8 school districts. So now what it is for us is to take a look at what that next level is, because we've expanded what we've looked at as the Economic Development Office 3+ years ago to say, how do we create communities that are attractive to that next generation? What are those needed amenities, those wanted amenities? We've got numerous housing subdivisions that are working in the county, but we also need to make sure that we're looking at what that workforce affordable housing is. And, we selfishly want people to live in the same community that they work in. So it's, a lot of pieces to the puzzle that we look at, but how can we look at doing those things? Tamala mentioned the summer manufacturing camp that we just came off of, and it was 20 students. And one thing that was very interesting to me when you talk to those kiddos, once they were done, they had fun that week. And, we've gotten over a bit of a hump of looking at manufacturing as being a dark, dirty, dangerous profession. And so we've also taken it now, we've done well with educating the educators and moving some of those things forward. I think we need to get a little better at the parent education. And how do we look at that? I think we need to also look at how far down we can drill to get that. Stephanie was talking about, in grade school, and I don't think it's any too young to even just put an opportunity out there for those kiddos to look at that. Automation is going to be a very big piece. So how do you work with them on a little robotic arm? We had Fast Lane at the camp, and they brought a little robotic arm. We had Upper Valley Career Tech. They brought a virtual welding machine. So it's just getting those little touch points to those students in that area. It's a matter of how do we look at making sure that our communities have those wanted and needed amenities. The child care piece that Stephanie referenced, right now we've got 2 of our communities that have daycare centers that are filled to the gills and looking at expanding. And, obviously that's a needed and wanted amenity in our community. So we need to make sure that we're addressing that piece. So it was nice to hear some of the things that the Lieutenant Governor talked about are items that we've looked to take on over the last couple of years and how we move that forward. And again, for us, it's looking at what's that next level. So I think we've done a good job at addressing some of those things from a local perspective. But again, we're all on this trip together, and I think working collaboratively. The job fair piece that's coming up is going to be a great collaborative effort with numerous entities in the county. So it's just looking at those things and truly communicating. And communication is going to be critical in this to talk to. The chamber has a great HR council, and Peggy does a great work with those folks, and they have a lot of great input. For us, it's going to be taking that a bit to the next level, talking to some of our plant leads and saying, what are you also seeing, and how can we become a better resource countywide for you to pull in that workforce? Because again, workforce is critical, and we just want to make sure that we're being the resource that's needed for our local manufacturers.
No, thank you. Thanks for all your work, actually. So just kind of more of a general conversation piece, Stephanie and Mike and Tamala, you guys work in this so much. And again, you're always looking outside of our region, which, we look to you guys for this. What are some more innovative ways that we can attract workforce? As Lieutenant Governor Husted mentioned, we actually have a low unemployment rate. So some of the stuff that is affecting other larger urban metropolitan counties aren't as relevant to ours with the lower unemployment. As an aside, I remember, and I think this was like 10 years ago, so I can't imagine what the number is now, but at that time, they did some sort of survey, and new college graduates, kind of in the millennial graduation, were willing to sacrifice up to $10,000 worth of salary in favor of flex time and work from home and telecommute, more vacation time. That was worth $10,000 of money to them. So what other more innovative thoughts or packages are you guys seeing that employers are doing, elsewhere that maybe some of the employers on our call today should consider or think about?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. We're definitely talking about all of this in the light of the last 18 months. There was, I think, a lot of employers learned a lot, and they learned that they had abilities that they didn't know that they had, whether it was to manage and execute at least partially remotely. And not every employer was able to do that. And there's certainly, there's functions across industries that will always have to be in the facility. But Katie's exactly right. I mean, I talk to employers all the time, and money is not the only issue. It even is something that certain generations are willing to not make the top priority in favor of some of that flexibility. I was talking with a local employer here just south of Dayton, and they were needed to hire this year, but by the end of 21, at least, I want to say it was like 25 people that were fluent in Java. So these were IT jobs that were at that entry level, at that hiring at $85,000 a year. So these were good paying IT jobs, and she couldn't find them. And so I started digging a little bit deeper, and she told me, she's like, well, our policy is we want everybody back into the office. And so she was talking with a lot of these people who, not to stereotype, but some of these programmers who were used to, working out of their basement, completely online the whole time, didn't necessarily need to be in a facility, and they didn't want to go back to being in an office space. And so we started to get to the fact that there maybe is a little bit more flexibility, and that will be demanded, honestly, by the workforce moving forward. And so I think there's that tension with, responding to some of those market pressures, but employees really needing to create a culture that people want to be part of. And so how does that culture translate to in-person and remote opportunities? And that's something nationally we're having a conversation around. I think some of the other issues relate to some of the things I brought up. So whether it is employers helping with childcare opportunities, whether it is a childcare subsidy for employees, or just helping to identify more access to childcare for their employees. It's the retraining opportunity, the tuition assistance, the credentialing and upskilling. I think anytime an employer can invest in their workforce, that's a huge draw, I think, particularly for our younger workforce who over the last 18 months lost out on some of those opportunities because we were in a climate that did not have, really room for any kind of external training. So that's a huge benefit for employers to attract new folks. And then I think just being very clear as a community about what the quality of life is in your community. And so we've all talked about, what are some of the amenities that are around us, but this is what's going to differentiate not just our regions, but Ohio from other parts of the country. So whether, we were talking about the coast earlier, but they're going to run out of water in Arizona very soon. And so when we're recruiting employers, we're being very clear about there being ample resources for them to come and do their business here. And so that, it's an economic development attraction tool, but it's also a human capital attraction. You come here, there's a lower cost of living. We're away from some of the more extreme weather, and all of that, the way that things are going, all of that makes Ohio much more attractive. So I'll stop there.
Katie, I wanted to chime in for just a second. Just a creative solution that I saw when we were in Northern Ohio. And, I think Stephanie would agree, transportation and childcare are probably two of the biggest barriers that folks face. And around the Bowling Green area, they were struggling with workforce and transportation for some of their plants that were not right accessible through either public transportation, maybe 15 miles. We have the same thing where our industrial sites are maybe even 5 or 10 miles outside of town. And if you don't have a reliable vehicle, that's not always the easiest. And the solution that they came up with, I thought was brilliant, is they actually started recruiting in Lima and some other areas even that were farther away. And the employers themselves collaboratively contracted with a bus service to pick folks up and bring them to the plants. Now, the plants had to get creative because they had to stagger some of their shift schedules because folks are coming in on the bus. They had to go to one place, drop off one place first, drop off the next. I'm not sure our folks would be coming from that far away, but looking at those really creative solutions and being willing to say, okay, we'll start our shift at 7:30 as opposed to having always started it at 7, or these folks start at 7:30 and work until whatever, being willing to step back and let go of the we've always done it this way, and work collaboratively and rather than competitively with our other employers here in the county. I think that we can really, Mike, I'm excited to hear about the plant, the facility folks really getting together and looking at some creative and solutions. We got to get outside the box here.
Oh, and a lot of these conversations, I think Peggy and I have talked just on the federal level. And again, we mentioned that we may actually do a deeper dive, kind of a separate call, maybe with Senator Sherrod Brown's office or others that are kind of championing this, but really looking at immigration. And I know it's a very polarizing political topic, but it's a labor force that many of our largest employers in this area are already using. And if we can do it right with citizenship and it's a dependable pool of people that are already many times here. So how do we work with immigration? Also, prison education is something that I'm actually surprised that Lieutenant Governor Husted didn't talk more about. And I think there's so many different facets of workforce, but this administration is doing a lot with prison education because again, these are physical bodies in Ohio, in many of our taxpayer subsidized facilities already. How can we be using these incarcerated inmates who oftentimes are very physically able, very mentally capable of performing some of the tasks that we need? So prison education and rehabilitating those that are coming out and re-entering the workforce is important. And then obviously what we've heard most about today is that partnership with K-12 and those partnerships and co-ops, even in post-secondary is important. And I know Edison is a seat at that table always, so we appreciate that. So we are at the end of our hour. We appreciate all of you guys today. Thank you so much, Stephanie and Mike and Tamala, for joining us. Thank you to Julie from Lieutenant Governor Husted's office for helping to facilitate this. And we appreciate all of you guys joining us today, and we appreciate all that you do for Darke County in making us grow and be a robust area to live and raise our families. So thank you, and we'll send you away and have a good day.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Peggy.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tamala. Bye.